Thanks for checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board. If you enjoy the video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and you can check out all of my work at patreon.com/theFFeducator. This is my first Dynasty Rookie mock draft of the 2022 season. I am Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, and I am excited to provide some insight into what your rookie mock drafts could look like this upcoming draft season. So what I'm going to do on this episode is break down a potential first round for a superflex PPR rookie draft. I will be doing not just my rankings, my top 12 players, but I'm going to try to provide an insight of trends I have found over the last couple of seasons, but also provide some insight and analysis into what I'm seeing from different analysts and experts out there, as well as my league mates, patrons in the Discord, overall fantasy football players, to give a good mix of not just my top 12 players, but also general player value at this point in time. Now, there will be a lot of talented players that are not included in this video, and I will be doing a lot more rookie mock drafts. And like I said, I genuinely want to know general player consensus. So if there's a player in this video that you feel like should have been in the top 12 in the first round of a rookie draft, go ahead and drop that in the comments. Let me know. I'm excited for the discourse back and forth. But let's go ahead and jump right into it here with the 101. And I do have Matt Corral coming off the board with the 101 in a super flex rookie draft. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of preference over which quarterback will go first off the board. I have Matt Corral right now because I think he's riding a high in his popularity and value at this point in time. Matt Corral can sling the ball. He's got a great release, fantastic arm talent, and he manages the game well. And I know sometimes that's a negative term. It can be a hindrance for fantasy football purposes, but especially if you're playing in a league that prioritizes quarterbacks that don't turn the ball over, a -4 or a -6 interception, or even a Scott Fishbowl style league where completion percentage is important, having Matt Corral on your roster will be an even higher bump. So of course your settings will always be important. But Matt Corral, with his mechanics, his ability to process, his decision making, and his arm talent, put him at the top of the list. And do not forget, Matt Corral is not the most mobile quarterback that we'll talk about here in this mock draft, but he is a mobile quarterback, and that will extend his fantasy football value. Let's jump here to the 102. It's going to be a second quarterback coming off the board, and that is going to be Sam Howell, the quarterback out of North Carolina. Now, Sam Howell right now I think is going to ride a high value, at least pre-NFL draft process. And when I say NFL draft process, I'm talking about showcase games like the Senior Bowl. I'm talking about the Combine, interviews, and in the actual draft process itself, when we find out about landing spots. Sam Howell has been high in the fantasy football devy community here for about 3 years because he broke out right away as a freshman and had a really impressive initial campaign for the Tar Heels. Now, he's been a little up and down since. He peaked in 2020. He had a little bit of a down season in 2021, but he has undoubtedly fantastic arm strength, great rushing ability, good mobility. His mechanics, I think, improved from 2020 to 2021, and he got a little bit more comfortable working in the pocket and working under pressure. So I think there's a lot of upside behind Sam Howell. And now, before we jump into the 103 here, I want to take a moment and point out the fact that we have two quarterbacks coming off the board, 101 and 102. These guys actually aren't number 1 and number 2 on the rookie big board, but I'm trying to weigh my rankings against public opinion. If you want access to the rookie big board itself, it is just $3 a month, patreon.com/theFFeducator. We're in the 20s now for final evaluations. We're adding more each and every day. The goal, just like last year, is to get up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, potentially triple digits here for full evaluations, and in total, every relevant fantasy rookie coming out will be added to the rookie big board. It should be 130, 140 plus players. Now, depending on your league, you may see another quarterback run, but I think this year in particular, we're going to see a higher push for wide receivers and other skill position players. So let's jump into it here with our first wide receiver coming off the board. That is Treylon Burks, the wide receiver out of Arkansas. And Burks is a high upside fantasy football player, and I think that's really important. I always talk about drafting for fantasy football upside. Burks is super athletic, big-bodied guy, but he has the fluidity and the athleticism to go behind that body. I'm not drawing a one-to-one comparison at all when I mention this player, but think about the way that Deebo Samuel is providing fantasy football value for his versatility right now. Treylon Burks at times lined up next to the quarterback at Arkansas. He lined up split in, out wide. They moved him all around. They were very creative, using him in motion, giving him end arounds, targeting him on screenplays in the flat, right? They wanted to get the ball in Burks' hands. He has a huge market dominator. I know Burks is somebody who is a fan on both the analytics side and the tape side, and I think that could push up his ADP alone. By the way, a contested catch monster on top of that athleticism, great catch radius, great hands. There's a lot to like about Treylon Burks, and I think his fantasy football upside is what could push him to be the first non-quarterback drafted in a superflex league. Now, the big conversation throughout this draft process when it comes to the running back position is going to be Isaiah Spiller out of Texas A&M versus Breece Hall out of Iowa State. Now, I will mention at the end of this episode another running back that I think deserves to be in that Tier 1 conversation. But let's start here with the 104, where I have Texas A&M running back Isaiah Spiller coming off the board. Spiller works very well in between the tackles. He has great horizontal movements. I think he has excellent vision, good contact balance, great lower body strength. Now, does he have the most fantasy football upside? Potentially not, but I think that really defines the entire running back class coming out. I think Isaiah Spiller can be a very good running back 2, borderline running back 1 here for fantasy football over the next few seasons. Running backs tend to get pushed up in value, so Isaiah Spiller's not 4 on the rookie big board, but running backs tend to get pushed up in value and taken earlier, and if there's going to be a running back coming off the board first, for me right now, it is Isaiah Spiller out of Texas A&M. Now let's head back to the quarterbacks. QB3 coming off the board in this mock draft, and that's going to be Kenny Pickett out of Pitt. I'm a big fan of Kenny Pickett, and if you haven't watched Kenny Pickett tape, I highly encourage you to go and check it out, because when you watch him live, you don't want to like him as much as you do. He's not the flashiest player. He's not the sexiest player. He doesn't necessarily have as crisp of mechanics as Matt Corral. He doesn't have as upside rushing ability as Malik Willis or even Sam Howell. But what Kenny Pickett does well is just about everything. I think it's going to lead to a long NFL career. He's got great arm talent, understands how to adjust his ball at all 3 levels of the field, consistent, accurate, good mechanics, throws well on the run. Not the most mobile guy, but he can throw well on the run without losing a lot on his ball. So, when it comes to Kenny Pickett here, he may come in at 105. He's the 3rd quarterback off the board, but if you look at the rookie big board, he's actually my highest rated quarterback at this point in time. Certainly with all of these quarterbacks, it's going to come down to a little bit of preference between your league mates, and certainly we know how important the landing spots are to the quarterback position. But right now, I think Kenny Pickett goes off the board 3, even though I would consider him with the first quarterback off the board. Now, our last guy in the first half of the draft here, we're going to do a quick recap here before moving on to the second half. It's that second running back I alluded to, Iowa State's Breece Hall. Breece Hall is a little hit or miss tape evaluation for me. I gotta be honest with you. I liked his 2021 tape better than his 2020 tape. I think for his size, he should play bigger and he should play stronger, especially against the Big 12. But he's super productive and he's been tearing up undersized Big 12 defenders here for the past few seasons. What I like about Breece Hall, he's got excellent vision, and that's something that is really, really critical for me at the running back position. If you don't have good vision, you're probably not going to get a good evaluation from me, and if you have good vision, even if I have question marks for the rest of your game, I probably will end up giving you a good evaluation, because vision is so keen. It's not something that's often developed at the next level. It's something you really need to prove at the college level, and Breece Hall did prove that. He works well in a phone booth, good horizontal movements. He has some subtle elusiveness to his game. He's not the most explosive, but he can show burst to get through a small hole, get to the other side, gain that yardage, and running in a straight line, Breece Hall can accelerate downfield well. Now, if the DB gets the right angle on him, they will catch him, but running in a straight line, Breece Hall does have that upside speed, so there's a lot to like about this running back as well. He's going to fall in that same tier, that same projection conversation that I mentioned for Isaiah Spiller earlier, that running back 1-2 borderline area probably over the course of his rookie contract. Now let's do a recap here of the first 6 picks. We had 3 quarterbacks come off the board. It started with Matt Corral and Sam Howell. 101, 102, and then we had Kenny Pickett slide in there at 105. So 3 quarterbacks in the first 5 picks, just 1 wide receiver, Treylon Burks. And as you may guess, because there's so much dynamicism and depth of the wide receiver position of this class, the second half of this draft is going to be heavy on the wide receiver position. But we had to get those 2 running backs in the first 6 picks, being Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall. I will, however, have one more running back mentioned here, and that running back is in the same tier as Hall and Spiller for me. So let's go ahead and jump into the second half of this rookie mock draft, and it's going to be Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, coming off the board with the 107. Now, I like Wilson a lot. I got to be honest with you, I like his Ohio State teammate a little bit better, but there's still a ton to like about Garrett Wilson. Excellent hands, good route running ability. Now, one of the things that I tend to stray on compared to consensus when it comes to evaluating rookies is route running ability is not as important for me as it is for other folks, and that's why folks who tend to be route running technicians don't necessarily get as high of a rating for me compared to others. And so, Garrett Wilson, I still have him as a top 3 wide receiver, but he's not the number 2 for me, but I think for most folks, they have him slightly above Chris Olave. Now, Wilson, he has great hands as well. I think he has very good straight line speed, maybe not as fluid and athletic as Chris Olave, but there's certainly still a lot to like about Garrett Wilson. I think he could be a back-end round 1 NFL draft selection and certainly should be a first-round rookie selection. Now, the aforementioned Chris Olave comes in here at 108. I love Chris Olave. That is very well known, very well documented. I thought he would have been a first-round pick if he declared for the NFL draft in 2020. I think he is a first-round pick this year as well. He's an excellent athlete, moving around the field with great fluidity and athleticism. He separates very well off the line with his first step and his speed, creates separation very quickly right off the line of scrimmage, creates separation well downfield. Excellent handwork, great catching ability. He does a very good job. He's a very well-rounded wideout. He speeds up really quickly and runs well in a straight line. He could take the top off the defense, but he can work the underneath of the field. He's very comfortable moving across the field. So I think he brings a lot of versatility to his future NFL team. Coming in at 109 here, we're going to go back to the quarterback position. It's going to be the 4th one off the board and the final one here, and that's going to be Malik Willis, the quarterback from Liberty. Malik Willis has a ton of fantasy football upside, and that comes from his ability as a pure athlete rushing the ball. He's got excellent field position, great explosiveness, runs very quickly in a straight line, and a tremendous amount of elusiveness. Now, that cannot be understated when it comes to fantasy football, but we know how hard it is to project fantasy football success for quarterback prospects, and with Malik Willis, he's playing at Liberty. Remember, he was originally an Auburn recruit, but he transferred down to Liberty, and so playing a lower level of competition makes it a little bit more difficult to evaluate him. What's more concerning, though, is his inconsistent mechanics, his inconsistent ability to read the field properly, and so he's got to clean those things up because he does have some good arm talent to go with his mobility. He can really stretch the ball 40, 45 yards downfield. He adjusts the ball well at the second and first levels of the field here to not just rocket the ball, but he can sling it. So we need some development for Malik Willis. It'll be really interesting to see the scheme that he lands in, but I could not possibly let him go any lower than 109 because of the upside that comes with his fantasy football ability. At 110, we have Drake London, the wide receiver from USC. If Drake London did not have his season ended prematurely because of the lower body injury, we would be discussing Drake London right now in the Heisman conversation with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, and before this past weekend, Kenneth Walker, because Drake London was absolutely tearing it up, dominating for the Trojans, just like he has been the past few seasons, just not with the full market share like he has this year. Drake London comes in at 6'5", 205, and I know we've gotten burned by some of these big-bodied wide receivers the past few years, but I'm telling you, Drake London comes with the athleticism. He's a dual-sport athlete. He's played basketball before at USC. He was recruited to do both football and basketball for the Trojans. He has excellent handwork, huge catch radius, a contested catch monster. He runs a good comeback route. He can run a go route as well. So he has the ability to be a dominant player along the boundary. But USC did line him up inside as well, and he worked those underneath routes comfortably. So there's a lot of versatility to his game. One of the things I like to point out about Drake London, he went through 2 quarterbacks this season, Kedon Slovis and Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart, the true freshman for USC, he showed the ability, Jackson Dart struggled at times. As a true freshman playing in the Pac-12, he struggled at times to really find momentum and hit his receivers. Drake London clicked very well with Kedon Slovis. They have great chemistry. But Drake London really helped Jackson Dart because there were a lot of off-target passes that London hauled in, and he made it look easy, and they were actually very difficult catches. So he adjusts well to the ball. He has a large catch radius, and I think it's going to serve him well at the next level. There's a lot to like about Drake London out of USC. And I got to tell you, there's a lot to like about this next wide receiver, the last wide receiver coming out of the first round, David Bell at 111, wide receiver out of Purdue. And I know there's a lot of good wide receivers that were left out of this first round. So again, feel free to drop it in the comments for this episode. At me on Twitter. Let me know which players you think should have been in the first round. But we're finishing out the wide receiver conversation with David Bell out of Purdue. I got to tell you, David Bell made it in the first round for me over some other very talented wide receivers that I like for 2 reasons. One, he had the most improved tape from 2020 to 2021, the most improved tape grade from anybody I did summer scouting for, and I know David Bell has a cult following on Twitter, which just helps me understand where his general value is going to be, and I think it's going to push him up into this late first round conversation. Bell is a great contested catch guy. He has great hands. What showed up really well for me in 2021, I thought he looked a lot more fluid. He looked like more of a dynamic athlete. He worked better after the catch. I think his route running was much improved here. He has the ability to run the top of the tree well. He's got a nice comeback route. Purdue even targeted him a good amount in the flat and gave him the ability to work after the catch. So I liked what I saw from David Bell. I saw some good improvement from 2020 to 2021. Now, he's a very popular player out there. So at the back end of the first round, I would not mind taking David Bell at this point in time. And sneaking in at 112, I had to get one more running back in here because I am a huge fan of Kyren Williams, a running back out of Notre Dame. Now, I know right off the bat, he's a little undersized. 5'9", 195. He does hit that 195 threshold that I know is important from the analytics standpoint. And I think when it comes to the combine, he's going to bulk up a little bit. He'll probably come in 200, 205. Now, when you look at running style, Kyren Williams reminds me a lot of Mark Ingram. His ability to work in between the tackles with great strength, great lower body contact balance, excellent vision. Excellent vision from Kyren Williams. He is going to find a hole if it opens up. He knows when to be patient, and he knows when to put his head down and smash to get 2 to 3 yards for Notre Dame. But where he differs from Mark Ingram and where he becomes an even more dynamic fantasy football projection is his handwork. Excellent handwork, a highly targeted option from Notre Dame this season. So I see some great PPR potential for Kyren Williams. He's going to slide into this first round here at 112. I have Kyren Williams in the same exact tier as Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall. We're going to see how the NFL values him. I think he's going to be still a day 2 selection, and as long as he goes day 2 and he's not immediately slotted into a committee back role, Kyren Williams very well could be wide receiver 1, or I should say running back 1 or 2 for me. I'm telling you, I'm in on Kyren Williams. I'm excited about him. Let's go ahead and quickly recap that entire first round Superflex PPR mock draft. We had 4 quarterbacks come off the board. 101 was Matt Corral, 102 was Sam Howell. I think these guys are going to be interchangeable depending on your league mates. Kenny Pickett is somebody I think I am higher on than consensus, and I think he's somebody who's going to rise in value over the next few months, and it could end up being a conversation of the top 3 quarterbacks. Now at 109, I had the 4th quarterback coming off the board, Malik Willis. We're going to learn a lot about what the NFL thinks about Malik Willis over the next few months. If Malik Willis is a top 10 or top 15 quarterback, especially depending on the NFL offense he gets paired up with, he's going to be right up there in that same conversation as the other 3 quarterbacks I mentioned. I think for most folks right now, the first two running backs I had come off the board, Isaiah Spiller at 104 and Breece Hall at 106, are going to be the running backs that they're focusing on. But do not leave Kyren Williams, the running back out of Notre Dame, out of the conversation. I understand why some may right now and why it's safer at this point in time to be on Spiller and Hall. But I got to tell you what, no running back has excited me more on tape than Kyren Williams. And that means something for me. Now, the first round truly is defined by the dynamicism and the depth of the wide receiver position. And I'm telling you, I know there's wide receivers that deserve to be on this list that just we didn't have space for. But I did have 5 wide receivers coming off the board. First with Arkansas's Treylon Burks. I think his athleticism and his contested catchability gives him that upside to put him well above the other guys. Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave going back-to-back only seems appropriate. These two guys on top of David Bell and I think Drake London, even to an extent, it's going to come down to landing spot. That potential or that projected volume immediately in their career is going to be really crucial because I think both Wilson and Olave in particular project best as the second best wide receiver in a good offense. So if one of those two guys lands in a high volume passing attack, especially think about Green Bay. And I know the quarterback position is a little wonky, but let's just use this in a vacuum right now. If Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave ended up in a situation like a Green Bay where they had Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams consistently pulling the top coverage off of it, then that would allow either of these guys to absolutely eat against the weaker part of the coverage. And so if they land in a situation like that, they could be a top 4 or 5 pick. Easily, top 3 pick even, I would be willing to take one of those two guys. No tight ends go off the board in the first round. I feel comfortable at this point in time not projecting a tight end into the first round of rookie mock drafts, but that certainly may change here as we progress through NFL draft season. I appreciate you checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board. As always, I'm interested in your thoughts, whether you want to tweet at me, whether you want to drop them in the comments of this video. And remember, if you want access to the Rookie Big Board, now is the time to get it. Evaluations going up almost daily, adding to it, as well as a very active Discord channel and full access to my full breakdowns of all of these prospects. It's patreon.com/theFFeducator. As always, I appreciate you checking out this episode, and I appreciate you checking out the Rookie Big Board.